Hello, right. I am here with David, who is representing Exeter. We're going to have a chat today about all things Exeter. We'll look at last season. We've prepped him that we're going to talk about the playoff final, but we'll skip over that as quickly as possible. And then we'll look ahead to next season. So firstly, David, thanks for coming on.
Pleasure. Yeah.
How you doing? How's lockdown and everything been for you?
Yeah, not too bad. I work in retail, so I've kind of worked all the way through it really. So there's been a bit of normality to it, but yeah, it's certainly been a strange year, that's for sure.
Yeah, just a bit. Right, we'll get straight in. We'll talk about last season. Looking at the summer last year, did you expect yourselves to be in the position you were come the end of the season? Was it a bit of a surprise?
I wouldn't say it was a surprise. I think one thing that the club has been over certainly the last 4 years is consistent. I mean, in sort of 2016, 2017, they got in the playoff final both those years. The last year, or the year before last, should I say, they just missed out on the playoffs, and then obviously playoffs again this year. So I expected us to be kind of there or thereabouts.
Yeah,
So yeah, well, it wasn't a massive surprise. I expected us to be competitive, that's for sure.
yeah. I think from an outside point of view, I think really the last couple of seasons, everyone has always looked at Exeter at being a consistent top 10 team at the least. Then with a really poor record in the playoffs, which it must have been. It must have been a real confusing sort of end to the season where you obviously are happy that your team are in the playoffs and that the playoffs will be going ahead. But do you think if the season carried on, you could have made automatics?
Yeah, I mean, when the season finished, we were 3 points behind third spot.
Yeah,
We still had Cheltenham to play. We still had Plymouth to play. And I think of our remaining 9 games, I think 5 of them were at home. So I think we had a decent chance to kind of claw back those 3 points and finish the season strongly.
yeah,
So yeah, I think so much of the season. I mean, we had been in the top three for a large portion of the season, and we had just had a bit of a dodgy sort of February, March, and we had just slipped outside.
yeah,
So yeah, to be there or thereabouts all year, then to drop out on the algorithm that they came up with, yeah, it was disappointing, and also that gut wrenching feeling of, oh, here we go, the playoffs again.
yeah. Because I think because it was our last games it was a 3-1 against each other, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was.
Which I have to say, that for me was when I felt we really could contend with top seven.
Yeah,
Um, because I think all season, like you said, everyone had looked at Exeter as consistently top three. And then it just sort of, like you said, at the real wrong time, started to just drop outside, yet still be, you say a blip, but a blip up there is so tight in the top 4 or 5 that really a couple of bad results in a row, and it really did change the look of that top, the automatics and top of the playoffs.
yeah.
Um, so looking at players, I mean, there were some real standouts, but the one for me was Randall Williams, who had an absolutely incredible season. Was it a case of he has been like that for a while, or was it a real step up for him last year?
Yeah, definitely a step up. He came in the season before last. He came in January, and very promising signing. We got here. Well, we signed him from Watford, but he had been on loan at Wycombe in League One. And Wycombe fans seemed to really rate him. He had done very well with them and been part of their promotion winning side. So it
Yeah,
looked a really good signing, but he didn't he didn't really set us alight too much in that second half of the first season. I think he
yeah,
was kind of finding his feet. I wouldn't say we're a side that traditionally play with wingers We
Yeah,
always tend to be a side that kind of flood midfield and play a bit more football. So I think we were adapting to him and he was adapting to us.
yeah,
Yeah, this season, I mean, he really showed his quality, pretty much from the beginning of August. So yeah, big step up for him this season, but he really proved his quality.
yeah. I mean, he's a player that. Do you feel he will be with you come next season, or do you think it could be he could be looking to move up?
Um, oh, hang on, I've lost you. There you are. Sorry about that.
That's right. There we go.
Yeah, I think he could be with us. Purely because um, of the amount that we need in terms of transfer value to move him on.
Yeah,
He, I think Watford, who we signed him from, they let us have him for nothing.
yeah.
But he's got to. I think they've got 40% sell-on fee.
So it's not just the transfer fee for you. You're going to want the extra to make up.
Yeah, so I mean, if somebody bid sort of 300, 400,000 pounds in the current climate, you'd think, well, that's a good bit of money.
Yeah,
But obviously, then if you take half away, and then you think, well,
it's
our most
yeah,
important player to lose for 200,000 pounds, that's not enough.
yeah.
So I think with a year left on his contract, it'll be a case of judging the fee against his importance to the side.
And whether he could sign a new deal or whether he could be moving on. It's that way up off. I mean, traditionally that's something that we've always had where players going into the last year of their deal, you do think, shall we get something for them or shall we give them a season to keep the squad stronger and then lose them on a free at the end? But you're never gonna get it right, unfortunately, because there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah, absolutely. And in truth, the AG is, I think he's signed for Exeter, understandably, with our history of kind of producing young players as a stepping stone. I think he
Yeah,
came here, he thought, I'll play, I'll play every game for 2 and a bit years, and then at the end of it, hopefully my career will be at the point where I can then make that next step up. And I think Exeter were probably realistic enough to think that as well. I don't think there's any chance that he would sign a new contract. We
yeah,
wouldn't be able to offer him more money.
yeah,
So it's just a case of trying to get as much out of him between now and the end of the season as possible, and
yeah,
whether that is a fee in terms of money we can get for him, or whether that's the performances that he can put in for the team. So it's just
yeah.
they're just going to have to weigh it up, really.
Looking at the playoffs, I mean, I think it was a very difficult playoffs to call because I think you could make a case for each of the teams that were in there to win it. Um, I have to say, as soon as you got into the playoff final, I did think, after seeing both yourselves and Northampton, I did not see that result coming. Do you think it was a bit of a hangover from being in the top three and, like you said, dropping out at a real critical time? Or, yeah, what do you think about that playoff final?
Um, I think of all the teams that we could have played, probably maybe in the top half of the league, maybe even lower. I would say Northampton were the worst that we could have picked. Historically, I think we've beaten them once in about 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And they're traditionally a side that we always struggle with. We struggle with the physicality, and it's very rare that we beat a Northampton side.
Yeah,
So yeah, I was a bit fearful going into it, and in truth, all of those fears were kind of exposed. They were stronger, they were more physical.
yeah,
They really had our number from the off, and just when that first goal went in, a bit of a deflection, you could just see players starting to drop, thinking, we're at Wembley again, it's a playoff final again, we're losing again. And yeah, it just got worse.
I think you spot on with that. I think looking at the two teams, especially more from obviously we've seen a bit of both teams. I mean, Walsall played both teams twice over the season. I think the games against Northampton, you're right, they were more physical. They had their target men. They were what you would expect traditionally from a Northampton team. Where looking at yourselves, you try and play a brand of football that is keeping it keeping it at the feet, trying to work through teams. You've got you wing backs that are creating width, making the overlaps. I think if there were two sides that were the complete opposite of a League Two type of football, they were the polar opposites. It was a shame. I mean, I did a chat with a Cheltenham fan, Owen, and for me, the two teams that I think these are the two that are going to be the ones looking to be in the final were yourselves and Cheltenham. And I think a lot of fans tipped Exeter to be the team that went up after a couple of attempts, and it was finally going to be your year.
Yeah.
What do you think that Matt Taylor could have done anything different, or was it one of those that it kind of played out the way that everyone expected?
I think it was just one of those matches where if he had had 11 substitutions, it wouldn't have mattered. I think it was a game that we kind of lost mentally as much as anything.
Yeah.
You know, almost from the first minute, Vadine Oliver led the front line. Then you've got runners around him, and we couldn't cope with that physicality. There started to be individual errors. I remember the goalkeeper, Maxted, slicing a back pass that could have resulted in a goal. And even just in terms of basic competing for stuff in the box. I mean, in the first half, I don't remember us winning a header in our own penalty area. We were just beaten down. And it was just, I don't really think there was much you could have said. They were 2-0 down at half time. They came out and they started to play a bit.
Yeah.
I had a feeling that maybe they could get a goal and make a game of it, and then there's the sending off, and then it just becomes horrific then.
So what are your thoughts on Matt Taylor at the helm? Is he the right man for you? Or do you feel that you need something a bit different after another kind of failed playoffs?
No, I guess our club is run slightly differently. You know, if it was a Mansfield or somebody like that, they might think, oh, you know, we've not gone up, so we'll get rid and we'll change 10 players and we'll, get a new manager. That's really not how our club runs. Paul Tisdale was pretty much at the club until he didn't want to be at the club. I think Matt Taylor would be given the same amount of opportunity. I think they're really impressed with what he's done in the 2 years. There were plenty of people who thought Paul Tisdale walking away from Exeter would cause, a real downturn in our fortunes. That's not been the case.
Yeah.
Matt will be given another opportunity this year. There'll be a focus on youth this year, which will take pressure off from results, and he'll be given the opportunity to build the football club just like Paul was previously.
I think it's good though, because I feel that if you've managed to keep the same group of players and the same manager, and you have had a season where not only did you hit the playoffs, but you were in with a real shout of automatics, you've got to give the team another chance. Yeah, obviously you'll make players will come in, players will go. And like you said, there'll be an emphasis on youth, which, given the current financial climate, is is going to be key for all clubs. I think you've got to keep that stability, because if you do chop and change, it's always going to be another season of drop-in because it's not going to work straight away, and then another go. And if it doesn't work, it's the chopping and changing, dropping back down the league to come back up again. I mean, wasn't Tisdale at one point the longest serving manager in the Football League?
Yeah, he was with us for 12 years, which is, I mean, particularly in the current day and age, that is, it's a lifetime.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, I mean, Matt was Lincoln approached him sort of September, October time last year, with the opportunity to go up there and take on their managerial role.
Yeah.
He chose to stay at Exeter, and I think a lot of that is because he knows that he will be given the opportunity here to, but particularly he's a young manager. It's only this will be his third season.
Yeah.
So he'll really be given the opportunity to get better, as an individual himself, and also to keep
rather than
the
if
club.
a few bad results, his neck isn't on the line. It's a board that will give time to turn things around, which I think it's rare. It's very rare nowadays.
Well, I mean, I think you only have to look at Paul Tisdale, who went to Milton Keynes, won them promotion, had I think had a bit of a bad run of injuries, which caused a downturn in their results. And come October, he was, I think it was October, November time, something like that, he was gone.
Yeah.
Whereas at Exeter, there's no way they would have sacked him. He would have just, we would have just wait for the players to come back, hope the results turned, and we would have carried on. So I think, that he's probably the prime example of how other clubs run, and perhaps how Exeter runs slightly differently.
So how's your summer kind of transfer been, and how's it been going? Have you had many in, many out? Any surprises?
I mean, they froze the budget. So the way our budget has worked over the last 3 years is with like every club, we've got our base budget, and then because of the transfer money that we received from Ethan Ampadu going to Chelsea, and also Ollie Watkins going to Brentford, they took that money and they split it over 3 years. So they gave, in essence, it was about 500,000 extra to the budget over a 3-year period. So this year would have been the last year of that, but unfortunately that money's been washed up with everything that's happened. So the budget has been reduced. That's seen, I think, 9 players go out the door, and only 2 come in, and really only likely to be 2 that come in.
Do you feel any of the 9, has he basically trimmed the excess, or are there a few first teamers that you're a bit surprised to see leave?
I was a little bit surprised. Well, no, I wasn't surprised. I think people outside of the club were surprised to see Aaron Martin leave, who played in central defence for us. But as a supporter, I perhaps wasn't that surprised, because he's somebody that Matt seemed to go off quite quickly.
Okay.
I don't think he liked the fact that he could be rustled a bit as a centre half. If he was up against a strong centre forward, he did tend to struggle a bit. And I think the way Oliver bullied him at Wembley highlighted that.
Yeah.
So I think he wanted somebody a little bit stronger in central defence. As for the others, I mean, predominantly players over the age of 30 that just kind of come to the end of their time. So
almost hitting a bit of a refresh button without getting rid of your core squad.
Yeah, I mean, the focus at Exeter is always on the academy. That how the club functions is we develop young players, we get them into the first team, then we sell them for money. That's how the club keeps going.
Yeah.
And they've got a group that did really well. They got to the semi-final of the Leasing.com trophy.
Yeah,
And they also they won their group in the under-23 Premier League Cup,
well, that's
and
good.
were due to play Newcastle in the next round. So they've got a really good group of young players that are just coming through, and the fact that they've kind of got rid of a lot of players over the age of 30 to then allow this new group to come in and really start to make their names, I
Yeah,
think is a very positive thing. It's or he's kind of I mean, perhaps been forced into it because of the reduction in budget, but I think actually it may just work in our favour, because a
it's
lot of these youngsters are probably going to get opportunities that they may not have got if everything
yeah.
had stayed as
But
it
it's
was.
also, I feel that the season coming is going to be one of those where teams are going to be blooding youngsters, because across the board, clubs are going to have to play youth players. They're not going to be able to afford a squad full of seasoned pros or League Two experienced players. So I think it's the season to do that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
really, if like you said, if results aren't going your way, I think this season, if you're a team that are looking at playoffs and you finish just outside because you've managed to blood 5 or 6 good young players, I think fans will understand it.
yeah. I think that the one thing also that we have, and we're talking earlier about sort of pressures on managers. Our supporters understand what our football club is. It's trust owned. They understand the concept that when a young player comes through, yeah, of course we want to see him play for Exeter and we want to see him do well, but we also know that ultimately the idea is that we make that player as good as we possibly can. Hopefully somebody then comes in, pays some money for him, and then that keeps the club going. So
Yeah.
there won't, nobody's going to look at our squad, see that there's I think there's 11 players out of the 24 that are 23 and under this year.
Okay.
um, nobody's going to look at that in a negative way. People are going to, they will support the young players, and they'll want them to succeed, because
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, outside the playoffs, but ultimately the progress of this young group of players is as important as really anything on field.
So you said obviously there's been a couple come in, and we've talked, or you've mentioned about Ollie Watkins. Could could the could your transfer season take a bit of a turn if he is sold for a good sum of money, which could be the way, because there's a lot of clubs sniffing around him.
Yeah, I think probably a month ago, maybe a few weeks ago, just before the playoff final, with Brentford and Fulham, I think that was the hope that Watkins would be sold, and that would be kind of the answer to our prayers, and then we could sort of throw a load of money back into the transfer budget. But with the wage capping or the budget capping coming in, I'm not sure how much that extra cash would kind of influence our playing budget.
Yeah.
Um, I think Watkins being sold would definitely help. It would probably help them bring in another couple of players. However, um, there has been such a focus on, this is the year we're bringing through our youth players, that I
You
don't
can't
think,
then
uh,
change it by bringing in.
yeah, exactly that. I mean, with the senior pros that we've had go, just little things like the number 10 shirt has been vacated, and that's gone to one of our top young players, Archie Collins. The number 9 shirt, which has been vacated for 10 years now through the sad loss of Adam Stansfield, they've actually
Yeah.
brought that back this summer
Because isn't that
and given
for
it to,
youth? That's a shirt for youth products, isn't it? They've kept, which I think is a really good thing to do, is that really you've got these young strikers at the club that will look and go, that's my aim. I want to get that number 9 shirt.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And it's been given to Ben Seymour, who's another young player. So yeah, I think the Watkins money would be great, because at least, for the future of the football club, it would certainly take a lot of pressure off, considering everything that's happened, in this year, or this calendar year. But I think in terms of an immediate impact, yeah, it might allow Matt to maybe bring in one or two more, but I don't think Watkins would be sold and then all of a sudden they'd give him a whole heap of money and he'd sign 6 or 7 players.
It sounds like the board and the ownership do delegate the cash well. That, like you said, maybe you could get one, maybe two slightly more experienced players that could have an impact on and off the pitch for these young players. But it seems as though, like you said, with the previous sales and the previous money, that it'll be filtered over a couple of years, which, if you haven't got fans back for a while and you're not hitting the income streams, it's going to help you longer term rather than just the here and now.
Yeah, and I think also, if it comes in, there's always January. If bringing through the young players, there's going to be a lot of football played between now and Christmas.
Something like
it's
the potential of eight games before the end of September, dependent on cup progression, which is crazy.
Yeah. So that there's going to be a lot of football. Squad depth for all teams is going to be important. These younger players, they are going to play. They are going to get their chance. And you might get to January and think, okay, 1 or 2 have worked out. 1 or 2 maybe need to go back out on loan.
Yeah.
And if you've got that Watkins money to one side, you can think, okay, all right, we'll move a couple of youngsters out on loan and maybe kind of bring in a couple more experienced players. But yeah, I hope, and I'm pretty sure, based on the way the club have used money in the past, that there won't be any sort of splurge on transfers should this this cash come in from a prospective transfer of Ollie Watkins.
Yeah, right. Looking forward to next season, and with obviously the young squad that you've got, do you think it will be another playoff push? Do you reckon it's automatics? What does your head and your heart say for next season?
I think the way the transfer activity in the summer has gone for other clubs in League Two, it's been bizarre. The fact that some of the more wealthier clubs have been able to basically buy whoever they want, and then we've brought in a wage cap, seems completely bizarre to me.
I can't think of what club you could possibly be talking about here.
Yeah, but there you go. That's that is what it is. But I still don't see any reason why we'll be competitive. I mean, of the players that have left the club, there's only one, Aaron Martin, who I would really consider to have been a first-team regular last season.
Yeah.
So they've still got a very strong starting lineup. The squad depth is more focused on youth than on experience, but I don't actually see that as a bad thing. I think that could work as a positive. So I expect us to be competitive. There's usually always 3 clubs that have got a bit more money and do a bit better than us. We're pretty much used to that. But
yeah,
I think we'll be there or thereabouts, as we kind of usually are, really. I don't see any reason for a massive drop off. I think we'll be competitive.
Yeah. And looking as well, who would you say are going to be we'll go with key first teamer and a key youth prospect? Who are the kind of 2 to watch?
I mean, the key first teamer would be Randall Williams. We would need him once again. I mean, nobody used the right hand side of the pitch more in the entire division than we did last season, and that's no surprise. That's where Randall Williams plays. I think he had the highest amount of assists, highest amount of key passes in the league. So statistically, he was pretty much our attack.
And I'd like to see us keep it going, if he can keep it up next season.
Yeah, so I think he would be our key key first teamer, key youth player. There's a few, to be honest. I think Jordan Dyer, central defender, he's a really talented kid who could make a breakthrough. Joel Randall, who's a winger on the left-hand side. I would like to see him perhaps come in and provide a bit more balance. And finally, Ben Seymour, who's been given that number 9 shirt, and he, with that number 9 shirt, he will get the responsibility of playing consistently in the side and hopefully bringing some goals to his game as well.
Great. Well, I think that just about does us. Hopefully we'll have another 2 goal-filled games with you, because I think 2 games played and I think the count was 10 goals. Three. I don't know. We've got a habit of scoring 3 against you, so hopefully we can keep that up next season.
Yeah, it's particularly the game at Exeter. I think it was probably the game of the season last year. It was, probably. But we both saw the best and worst of each other in that game. So,
massively so. Once we scored our 3rd, it was like, right, let's sit back and let them get 3.
Yeah. So,
right.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll both be up in the top 7 next season.
Yeah, are you pleased with your transfer activity?
So far, so good. We've still got, I think, 3 or 4 to bring in. We've brought back Rory Holden, who I believe may have scored in that 3-1 on the last day, potentially. But Rory Holden grew into a really good player. We had him on loan from Bristol City, and we've now signed him permanently, which I think everyone's really pleased about. He was a really good player. He's 22. He very much adjusted to the squad and the league last season. And I think we've had him in that loan spell where he was, getting a real taste for it. And then he excelled the last sort of third of the season. And now he's looking, hopefully he can pick up where he left off and keep going. And then we've signed George Nurse on loan at left back. So we've got quite a good attacking left back. So yeah, I think they're the right type of signings for us. And I think we've got, like I said, we've got right back, right winger, goalkeeper, and possibly another striker to come in. And I think once we've got that, we'll be looking good. But like yourself, we've not released that many players, but the ones we have, there's no real surprises except one. But again, I think it's Shay Facey at right back who had a bit of injury problems. And I think looking at next season and the amount of games in a shorter period of time, I can understand that players with fitness issues, you don't really want to be having too many of them in your squad. Yeah,
looking through the release list, there did seem to be a bit of that trending throughout a lot of the release lists. Anybody that had a few issues.
Shame, because there was no bad words said about Shay when he left. The management and owner had said, we wish him best. There's nothing that he's done. It's just, I think as well, it's having, it would have meant we had 2 sort of more experienced right backs. And I think the wage level probably combined, we could get someone a bit younger, maybe even on loan, in that can do what Shay did and can probably play more in a season.
Yeah.
So it's a shame, but it's the way that things are going at the moment, unfortunately.
Expecting playoffs though?
I'd like it. I've been very consistent in saying that I think my heart is saying that we can finish in the playoffs. My head is saying that given the financial implications of obviously everything that's gone on, we may. I think top 10 is a realistic shout. But again, I'd rather say top 10 and finish top 7 than the other way around.
Well, it must be your turn to beat us in the playoff final this year. So everybody else has had a go.
That'd be great. Yeah. I think historically, like you said, I think we do okay against you. So that'd be nice. I really hope you don't have another unsuccessful playoff campaign because
Yeah, no, I don't think I can cope with it, to be honest.
no. Actually, something I did completely forget to ask. How was it being in the playoffs and the playoff final and watching from home?
Yeah, it was okay. There's a first game. I mean, for your sake, I hope you didn't watch it. But the away leg, I mean, it was dreadful. I mean, even as somebody who was a supporter of one of the teams involved, it was dreadful.
It was away at Colchester, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I
That
mean, it's
was
hard
not
to
a good
blame the
game.
players. Yeah, I mean, they'd had like, 3, 4 months off, and then you've got kind of a couple-week pre-season, and then off you go. So yeah, it was a really poor game. Second game was much better, a bit more of a tempo, and yeah, it was exciting to get through. But it's just one of those. I mean, we scored a goal in extra time to get through, and it's the big bank terracing at Exeter is it's a great place to be for big moments, and
Yeah,
that was a big moment, and it's just empty, and it's just
yeah,
it was it certainly takes the shine off it. And
yeah.
then at Wembley, I mean,
It's
kind of,
strange. It was strange watching it from a fan who, like a League Two fan that neither team I had an affiliation to, let alone,
yeah,
yeah, it's,
yeah. And it's that was probably the only good thing about Wembley. It didn't cost us anything to go up there and get stuff, so
yeah, you're not paying a
it's
fiver
usually
a
an
pint.
expensive day out. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Right, David, thank you very much. And
that's all right.
hopefully we'll be in chat soon before Walsall Exeter.
Okay, yeah, brilliant.
Thank you.